Bonjour! Setting your rates as a freelance makeup artist can be a very confusing and obscure topic, especially when you're just starting out. So in today's video, I'm gonna try to break down the system that I have for you so you have a better understanding of how I charge my clients and you can apply these numbers to your own business. This theory can be applied to all the different fields of makeup artistry. It can be applied for bridal makeup artists, for film and television, for commercial, for pretty much everything. Before we start, I just want to mention that I am not an accountant, I'm only a business owner. What I'm gonna talk about today is what works for me and my business. This is just to give newer people in this industry or people who want to become a makeup artist just an idea of where to start. And another thing is that the rate that you're gonna be charging depends very much on your location. I can give you my theory, but I cannot give you numbers. That's a work that you have to do for yourself based on your own situation. Deciding how much to charge your clients is a very, very important question. So that's why I'm asking you to sit down, take a couple hours, write all your numbers down, because that's something that's going to have an impact, a direct impact on your income and on your quality of life and on your career as well, because if you're charging too much, people are not going to want to hire you. And then if you're charging too little, first, it looks a little suspicious and you're gonna have to work twice as much just to meet ends at the end of the month, and you will burn yourself out very quickly by doing that. So you really have to find this sweet spot in the middle where the rate you're offering is average for your area, but that will also bring you a decent income at the end of the month. It's a very big topic. It's a complicated one too. That's something that I love to talk about. I could talk about rates for hours and hours. So I'm gonna try to make it as simple as possible for you. The first thing you have to take in consideration when trying to come up with a rate is the location, as I mentioned. Very important, depending on the country, the province, the state, even the city where you live, the rates are going to be completely different. It can go from simple to double within the same province. And for reference, I live in Canada, in the city of Toronto, which is a big city, a very expensive city. So obviously my rates are going to be higher than someone who lives in a small town or in the countryside. So that's why the location is directly related to my second point, which is the cost of living. The cost of living is basically how much it costs you to be alive. It's all of the bills that you will find in your bank account every single month, no matter what, such as rent, electricity, your phone bill, internet, all of the very basics. You have to know exactly how much money does all of that represent every single month, just to have an idea of what would be the minimum you need to make per day just to be able to pay for all of these necessities. That's the first thing and the most important thing to do when you're first sitting down and starting to think about your rates, because that's the only thing that's going to give you a solid number based on your own situation. And I will give you an example on how to come up with your living cost in the second part of this video. Then you have to think about the cost of business. So being in business is always costing you something, more or less depending your type of business. But for us makeup artists, it would be, for example, how much money we are spending on our kit, to buy new things or to replenish the products that we're finishing up. It would be, for example, how much money you spend on education if you're taking like classes to learn new skills or whatever. It would also be the subscriptions that you have. For example, I'm thinking about QuickBooks for my accounting, or I have to pay to host my website as well. So I have bills related to my business every month, and that would be my cost of business. In that category, you could also add some things such as if you have a car that you use to drive to jobs, you could also include a part of your rent because you're using it as your space to like clean up your kit, storage your things, whatever. It's easier for me just to keep them in separate categories for now, but it's important to take a small percentage of this especially during tax season, because you can deduct some of that on your tax return, but that's another topic for another day. Another point that's a little bit tedious, but it's very important as well, is to study the market. You have to know who is doing what, where, and for how much. A good thing to do is to reach out to the other makeup artists that work in your area. Send them a message on Instagram, send them an email, and ask them what's their usual rate. Not everyone will give you an answer because some people don't like to share these kind of things, and that's fine, but you should reach out to as many artists as you can, just because some of them will give you an answer, but you also need multiple answers to understand what's the average. Some makeup artists, especially in the bridal industry, put up their rates directly on their website. So with a quick Google search, sometimes you can also find some answers. And that would also give you an idea of how many people are doing this job in your area. And you can also see the level of the people that are around you. For example, if someone has 10 years of experience, you can see on their website it's clean, they have nice photos, they've worked with many different people. Their rate would be a bit higher than yours. Obviously, if you're just starting out, your rates would be lower, and that's something that you would increase every year. And it works the same way with other things. For example, if you've been to makeup school, you have to pay back all of that money that you've invested, so you can put your rate a little bit up. And then if you have a special skill such as airbrush, or if you are a barber or a hairstylist, that's another skill that you have, so you can put your rate up again. That's why continuous education is very important. Every year you should set up some money aside just for education and for learning new things, just to invest that money on yourself to give your business more value. And another thing that I want to mention is that even if you're just starting out, either you just graduated from makeup school or you're a self-taught artist, you should never undercharge. That's one of the worst things you can do for yourself and for the industry. And if some makeup artists hear that you're charging a lot less than they do, they are not gonna like you, I'm telling you. Because then someone is gonna hire you for, let's say, $100 when the regular rate would be $250, and then all the other clients would then expect to pay $100 as well. Because the client is gonna think that this $100 is your rate, and that's it. It's gonna be your rate forever, and then that client is gonna give your contact to another client. That client is gonna wanna hire you for $100 as well, because that's the rate that you gave. So it's a circle that's not profitable for you at all. Sometimes you would have to work for free, and that's fine, but only in very particular cases, and that's something that I would be happy to talk about a bit more in a separate video. But just in general, don't lower your rates. Another big factor is the field that you're working in. For example, my rate is not going to be the same if I'm working on a wedding than if I'm working on a film set. Each field has a different standard and different average in terms of rate. The easiest way for me to explain this is to think about it on a yearly basis. For film and television, you basically have work all year round, with a peak, obviously a busy peak in the summer, but even through the winter it slows down, but there is still work. The rates are usually a bit lower per day when you work in film and television, and the hours are pretty long. I would say that in average a day on set would be 12 hours plus, like 12 hours is the minimum. So it's intense, it's hard, and it's definitely not for everyone. But the good thing about it is that you have a contract for multiple weeks or multiple months sometimes, which is something that's very amazing as a freelancer, because it gives you a lot more stability than have you know, a one-day job here, one-day job there. So you're gonna have stable income for the entire duration of your contract, which is something that's very reassuring when you're a freelancer, because income can be very unstable sometimes. And I feel like that's why a lot of people work in film, to have this sort of stability. Rates in this field are per day, and a day is considered 10 hours or 12 hours depending on the production that you're working with and depending if you're part of a union or not. In commercials, the rates are usually a bit higher, but it really stops in the winter, especially here in Canada where the winter is really cold. So everything just kind of stops from mid-November to, let's say, end of February. And that's the case for commercial. It really dies down in the winter. So the busy season is a lot shorter, and commercial projects in general are very short. It's 1 day here, 2 days there, 3 days max, but not more than that. So it means that once your day is over, your contract is over, you have to start looking for your next job. And it's always, you're constantly looking for the next job. You never stop. That's why the rates are a bit higher, because we don't have constant work. The way the rates work is pretty similar as in film. You charge per day, and depending on the production, you can also charge per hour if it's part of a union. The work days are much shorter than for films. I would say that the average day is 10 hours on set for a commercial. And now for the bridal rate, it's actually the highest rate, I would say, because the busy season is very short. The bridal season here in Canada goes from, I would say, April to October. So it's like 6-7 months that are very busy, very intense. But the rest of the year, it's completely dead. There is nothing, there is no weddings here in the winter. Sometimes the odd one here and there, but that's definitely not enough for you to make a decent income. And because it's such a special event in people's life, the clients are willing to pay a lot more money when it's for their wedding day. Everything that we're using is more luxury. You really want your client to feel special. You're applying false lashes. So the cost of working in bridal is a lot higher as well. Another reason why the rates are higher is because you're supposed to save all of that money that you made during the busy season and stretch it to keep you alive during the winter. You're like a little squirrel making all the money in the summer and then digging it back in the winter. And working in wedding is hard, it's stressful, because you directly have to deal with a client, and a client that's usually very stressed because it's their big wedding day. So it can be hard sometimes to manage that. And there is a lot of email back and forth, which is very time consuming, because you have to set up your rate with them, you have to make them sign the contract, you have to discuss about their schedule, about the look that they want, you have to schedule a trial, you have to take notes from that. You know, it's like, it's a lot of administration for only doing makeup for like 2-3 hours usually. So you have to make sure that your rate is high enough so it can cover all of that time that you've spent planning out everything. There's different ways to charge for bridal. I would say that is the one that's the most technical, but something that's very popular is to charge per service. So for example, one full face of makeup would be one service, and then if you do hair as well, hair would be another service, and you would set up a minimum of service, for example 4 services minimum, because you don't want to be booked for a job where someone is hiring you just to do their one makeup. It would not be profitable for you. So you have to be like, okay, I'll come to you, but I need 4 services minimum. That's something that's very common to do. And then you have to think about if you want to include the lashes in that price or if you want to add them as an extra. You have to think about the travel time too, especially for weddings, because sometimes people are getting married outside of the city or, you know, a little bit further away. So you have to think about the time that you're spending in your car driving back and forth, because it can easily go to like 1, 2, 3 hours. You have to be compensated for that, and also for the gas that you're spending, and obviously the car. So it's a bit more technical, but by reaching out to bridal makeup artists that work in your area, I'm sure you'll find a lot of different options. That's the 3 makeup fields that I'm the most familiar with. I'm sure there is a lot of little niche ones, but these 3 are the most popular ones. You also have to think about the client. Is your client a small independent production company, or is your client a multi-million-dollar company? Obviously the budget is going to be very, very different. And if you know that they have a very big budget but the rate they are offering you is low, you can negotiate with them. That only works for commercials, in film as well. In bridal though, you have to make sure that your rate is always consistent. You cannot charge more this client and less that one. Word of mouth, you just have to be consistent with that. But when you work with a production that works with a client, there is room for negotiation for sure. Another thing would be your kit. Do you carry drugstore products or do you carry luxury products? For example, if you're charging a higher rate, but you only carry drugstore products, I don't think that's fair for your client. If you decide to charge for a higher rate, your presentation and your kit should also reflect that, because you're selling a luxury service. And the last part would be all of the little questions that you should 100% ask before booking any jobs, such as is it a half day or a full day? How many talents are you gonna have to take care of? What's the location? Is it 5 minutes away from your house or is it 2 hours away? That's a lot of little things that you have to take in consideration before giving a number to your client. And I'm sure it happens to every makeup artist, like it happened to me as well. You give them a number, let's say $300, and then they tell you, oh, there is actually going to be 8 women to do a full face on and it's 2 hours away from the city. And then you're like, the number that you gave your client, this 300, is not enough for the amount of work that I have to do. And in that case, it's your own fault, because that's a question that you should have asked before giving them a number. Very important step as well, and that's something that you just learn as you go. So that's all the elements that you need to think about when you set up your rate. It's a little overwhelming, it's not very fun, but that's something you have to do once, and then once you start working it becomes so much easier. And we're gonna do an example together on how to calculate your cost of living. And after I did that for myself, the rate system became immediately a lot more clear and a lot easier to understand. The cost of living is all the bills that you cannot escape, is all the things that if you're not paying them, you're going to be in trouble. We are going to use random and simple numbers, and then you can just replace these numbers with your own. So the first thing we have to pay for is rent, mortgage, whatever expense you have to have a roof over your head. So I'm gonna put my rent at $800. Then we have all the facilities, all the bills, such as water, electricity, gas, whatever applies to you. I'm gonna put $150 for that. Then you have your phone and internet bills. How much money you're spending on food per month. When I'm talking about food, I'm talking about food at the grocery store. I'm not including any extra meals such as takeout or going to the restaurant, because I consider that as extra. So groceries would be let's say 250 is the inflation. It's probably more than that. The car, everything that's car related. So if you're paying it per month, if you have a lease, I'm including in that the insurance as well and the parking fees. And then you have to pay for gas as well. So let's do 300. I guess it's an average because you're never spending the exact same amount of money every month, but average. And then you have all of the subscriptions such as Netflix, Prime, Apple, whatever subscription you have. And you can add to this category anything else that applies to your situation. For example, if you have kids, you can include daycare in there. Based on my number, the total would be 2110. We are going to divide that by how many days there is in a month. So let's pick an average of 30 days. So 2110 divided by 30, which gives us 70.3 per day. We are going to round it up at 70. So that's how much all of these bills cost you per day. And then on top of that, we are going to do a quick business cost as well. In the business expenses, I'm going to add the kit. So it's adding new products or replacing the products that you're finishing up. Same thing, it's pretty much an average because on some month you're not going to spend any money, and the month after you have to replace all of your foundations. So I'm going to put $200. Let's put $20 per month to host your website. And then you have the subscriptions. So for example, QuickBooks, your bank fees, anything that you're subscribed to for your education. And I'm also going to include an average of the money I'm spending on meals and coffee while I'm working. So I'm gonna put $50. All of that is $295 that we're going to divide by 30 one more time for 30 days in a month, which gives us 9.83 that we are going to round up at $10. So the $17 of cost of living plus the $10 of cost of business gives us $80. $80 is the bare minimum you have to earn per day to stay afloat. So it means that if someone comes up to you and they're like, we have this little job, it's a small indie thing, you'll get paid $50 for your kit fees. $50 is less than the bare minimum you have to make. So it means, technically, it means that you're paying to work with them because you're losing money by being on that set that day. So there you go. That's your very first base. Nothing should be less than $80. And then on top of that, you have to pay for everything that I mentioned earlier, which is travel time for all the products that you're using, all the time that you're spending cleaning your brushes after a job, packing up your kit. And you also have to pay yourself because on this $80, you're actually not making any profit. So it means that you cannot spend any dollar for yourself. And because it's your own business, you're the only person making decisions, you can actually decide how much profit you want to make and how much money you want to have in your own pocket at the end of a job. But you also have to come up with a realistic amount of money. That's when studying the market is the key for that. Now, again, that's something that's for newer makeup artists. If you've been in business for years and you want to charge $800, do it. Once you reach the point where you can charge whatever you want and your clients are okay with it, that's bingo, like it's the top of your career. But to get there, you have to start with an average and realistic rate. On a very personal opinion, and again based on my location, I would say that if you're not making at least 3 times your cost of living plus cost of business, so our $80, if you're not making at least 3 times that by going to a job, I don't think it's worth it. I don't think personally I would take a job and leave my house for something that's less than that. But once again, it depends on so many different things. I've had jobs where I made $200 for a full 12 hours days on set, and then I had other jobs where I made $500 only in 2 hours. So your income is always going to be different, but you have to think that if you're accepting this job that's paying you a little bit less, then you're gonna have to make up for it with a job that's paying a lot more. So see what's worth it for you or not. That's something that you'll start figuring out once you start working, once you start meeting other makeup artists, and once you start getting different offers as well. Because for example, when you work in film or television, usually they come to you with a rate that has already been approved by the production. So they give you that number, it's either you take it, you leave it, but that's also going to give you an idea of who is offering how much. Now, a little piece of advice is that hiring a makeup artist is a luxury. Not everyone can afford it, and that's okay. We don't have to discuss our rates. That's why understanding exactly why you're charging that amount of money is important, because you can stand with your numbers and it's not too high. You should not be scared about charging a lot of money because of all the reasons that I just mentioned in this video. We don't do discounts. For example, when you go to the hairdresser or when you go buy groceries, you don't ask for a discount, you don't ask for a reduced price, because that's just the price, that's what it is. And if you can't afford it, you just don't buy it. It should be exactly the same thing for makeup artists. We are artists, yes, but we are over everything, we are a business. If you lose a client or if you don't get a job because they are not okay with the rate that you're giving, then it's fine. It's just because that client was not meant to be for you. There is so much more that we could talk about regarding rates, and I would be happy to develop certain points in future videos if that's something you'd be interested in. If you do, please like this video to let me know. You can also ask me all of your questions in the comments, and if you're interested in everything that's makeup artist related, I'm inviting you to subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much for watching all the way here. I hope it was not too complicated and I hope it was helpful. I will put a video here for you to watch next if you want to see more about my makeup kit. Take good care of yourself and I will see you soon. Bisous!